Dávid Turczi has become a prolific game designer, but has also become well known for his solo designs and collaborations. He has designed or co-designed Anachrony, Dice Settlers, and Roam and Roll, as well as the solo mode for Kanban EV. Well, welcome in Dávid Turczi.
It all started with Anachrony many years ago. We needed more stretch goals, and I have recently played Morten Monrad Petersen's Automa for Tuscany Viticulture, and I told myself, hey, I can have a crack at this too. And I like the simplicity of how I don't have to think what's worst for me, make decisions against myself, but I wanted to simulate the feeling I get from a two-player game a little bit more, and I wanted the state of my opponent to be relevant and to its next move and predictable what it would do in a way that I would be able to roughly guess what action a human player would do. And because Anachrony enjoyed great success, I was given many more opportunities over the years with all sorts of publishers, and I guess practice made perfect, and the more and more games and the more and more systems I applied to what sort of interaction do I want the players to feel when facing their opponent head-on is something that has been missing from most solo approaches, and that allowed me to hone my craft and work with more and more wonderful testers, developers, and other solo designers, so that today it's almost like a professional team effort to analyze a game and come up with a solo mode for it. I was visiting Randall and Eagle-Gryphon in Phoenix just before COVID and the dark times hit for a completely unrelated project, and while I was there, Randall said, well, there's one game I would really like you to try, and he took me out for some nice good American food, and while we were waiting, he pulled out Railways of the Nippon from his bag and said, so have you played any train games? And I was like, well, I've been staring at my copy of Age of Steam for a while, but show me what you got. And we played one game there waiting for the food, and then another game back at where we were staying, and the game clicked. It was... I understood what I was doing. Obviously I lost both times, but I understood the choices. I was impatiently worrying what he would do against me, and I was like, all right, I see what you're doing. You're trying to provoke me into applying my interaction focused approach to making a solo mode for this, because train games very rarely have solo modes, especially not economy focused proper network building big train games. And he said, well, yes, the thought has crossed my mind, show me what you got, no rush, whenever you have an idea. I think it was the next day when he had to run into the office, and I was like, all right, I'll just entertain myself at home, and we can continue when you get back. And he was gone a little bit longer, and I was just sitting there staring at the packed up box of Railways from the day before, and I was like, why not do it now? So I opened the box, I took out a piece of paper, and I jotted down the notes of what level of maximum complexity I want to deal with in a bot in this game. It was obvious it needed to build links to make the map more competitive. It needed to occasionally deliver cubes to make it harder for me to pick where to pick the cubes from, and the rest is all about the money pressure and the can I get enough money to build more to score enough points before the end game runs out. And I showed the game to him like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours later, and he played a couple of rounds, and he said, okay, this could work. And when I got home the week after, I called my trusted right-hand man, John Albertson, who has been the lead solo developer for Anachrony. He famously played the Chronosus over 100 times. He was one of the team members on Kanban EV as well, and now he's my solo co-designer on the solo mode for Perseverance Castaway Chronicles. And I told him, have you ever wondered about train games? And he said, I'm listening. And after catching him up on the itty-bitty details, then he sat down and said, all right, let's do this. And after a couple of testing, a couple of streamlining, it appeared that the system is working for Nippon. And then we set out, well, mostly he set out, I just provided him with a ton of notes and occasional crazy ideas on how to adapt it to the other maps to preserve the characteristic and the unique aspect of each map that brings to the multiplayer game of Railways. We wanted to give it back to the solo players as well. So here we are, almost a year later, or possibly more, and now we have half a dozen or more, I don't even know, Railways map uniquely solo playable against the Automa that I created on that fateful afternoon, and John has been laboriously playtesting it ever since. We think a game is great for various reasons. I myself count myself a heavy Euro strategy gamer. I want to make a plan. I want to feel thrilled and intellectually worried during it, but I also want to do it while not being bored when my opponent is taking their turn, which means I want to care about what they're doing, I want to understand their plans, I want to be able to influence it, I want to be worrying that they might influence mine. Meanwhile, do it in a non-negative way, not stand under a rain of slaps, but calculate cost and benefit of should I be building my own or making it harder for them to build theirs. I am fundamentally and first and foremost not a solo player. For me, everything is about talking to people and making them understand what I'm thinking and making me understand what they are thinking. Therefore, when I play solo, I start to talk to the cards and everything goes horribly from there. But I figured there must be people out there who want and like to play solo, but they don't like how it is a lesser experience than a good 2 or 3 or more player interactive economic Euro. And I said to myself, initially not this on purpose, initially it was more like a trial and error through my earlier attempts that the first Anachrony bot or the Petrichor bot or Dice Settlers bot, but then it evolved. Then I saw from feedback what worked, what didn't, and I figured that the first thing that makes a solo play great is by not being worse than the multiplayer game. And of course this means the multiplayer game needs to be really good, but luckily there are many great designers out there, and occasionally I manage to pull a game through as well that provides that great multiplayer experience and lets me strategize and feel excited and feel accomplished while caring about what's on the other side of the table. And the trick is to figure out the right balance of how much to abstract out so that I don't actually have to play a full game for my opponent, for my solo opponent, but just enough so that I care and just enough that I can influence. And lately, the second thing that I've been adding more and more, mostly on popular request, is simplicity. And how can I simulate more and more with less and less? And I think Railways is a very quintessential example of this, because you take 3 actions each round, you only have to deal with 1 card between the second and the third action, and yet the impact of it matters to you as much as any player's 3 actions would. You can influence it with the insurance mechanism, you can predict what it's gonna do, so even if you don't want to insure, you can just see that it's about to build on a particular area of the map and you go and build there yourself. and it creates a constant pressure which makes you strive to do better, just like trying to outplay a human opponent would, and does so while being extremely simple. Flip a card, do the one thing written on it, rinse, repeat. And that is what I think is the singular focus that enables great solo play of any game, in this case Railways of the World and Railways of Nippon.